And that's a wrap.
Spook!
Yes,
Was that an earthquake?
I think so. Either that or it could be the reality of Carlton's season crashing to the ground.
Welcome to the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And it's either concussion or I'm disease-free Spook.
Spook!
Yes!
How happy are you for us to have won our 16th flag on Sunday?
Do you know, I've got the feeling you've asked me this question before.
Well, I ask it every week,
I've got the feeling that you're going to ask me a whole bunch of questions I've already answered.
Yeah, so...
in the previously unrecorded version of the rant.
So...
Meanwhile...
the 16th flag against the might of North Melbourne.
The 16th flag, you say?
Yes. According to the supporters, that's what's happening.
Our supporters?
Yeah.
They're not going off too early, are they? It's not like...
Maybe a little bit.
It's not like they have history of doing this, do they?
No, not at all.
No.
So we played North.
Are we in September yet?
Almost.
Oh.
Played North 4-3 to 0-3 in the first quarter. 7-5 to 2-8 by half time. So game's effectively over. I mean, I know games can turn around really quickly, but it is North Melbourne. Third quarter, we kicked 6 goals free. They kicked 2-1. We got up to about a 52-point lead, I believe. And then just sort of went to sleep a little bit.
Yes.
And...
well, thanks for watching.
How do you feel about, like, we dominate the game, dominate North, probably could get a percentage boost and win by 25 goals, and we've sort of gone, let's play a little bit of tempo.
Well, there's almost two things with this. And one's a little bit annoying to say, but I don't think McFly goes out there with the intent of destroying sides. I think there's a whole lot of things that we try and tick off that we want to achieve in a game, and they're more important than the end score, especially at this point in the season, and maybe you can explain it to our watchers. 4 points is probably what you're after at this time of the year. Margins probably aren't really factoring in. Look, it comes as a useful boost at the end of the season if you've got a hefty percentage at times, but at the moment we're sitting 3 games clear of the end of the 4. You're in a very good, stable position. I don't think at this stage you're going to go out and destroy sides, even though I would love it. I think we probably should have stitched Carlton up because that's just who they are. I think everyone expected us to belt North out of the park, and it's a little bit of
I guess the relief
injustice to North to a certain extent.
Yeah, I guess the relief is it wasn't a close game like last year, so they...
No, but I think we were contemplating. I think we were content just to keep them at arm's reach as well. McFly mentioned in his presser, and I feel like I've mentioned this already once before, that we shifted a few magnets into different positions this week. So clearly there was a little bit of trialling going on. You had McCreary on the ball there for a while. You had Hill pushed up and along the wing. Yeah, how did you know I was going to say that? This is like Groundhog Day. Again. Yeah. I think you were afforded the opportunity to experiment a little bit, which at this time of year against that sort of opposition, it's not a bad luxury to have. It's obviously, the easy thing I think would be to say stick to your predictable structure and just go out and smash a side. But if you're going to win and you're happy with the 4, at least you could dick around a bit and try some stuff that's a little bit different.
Also, McRae, coming out of that Brisbane dynasty 01, 02, 03, they, off the top of my head, I don't think they ever finished first in that period. For them, it was just like, we just need to get top 4. Preferably we'll get a home game, but if we don't, we'll win and then, do the rest. And even in 203, they lost the first final to us, and then they got sent to Port Adelaide or whatever the fuck it was. And they ended up winning. So for him, it was just like, put us in contention. Or for Matthews, it was like, just get us in contention and then we'll do the rest on the day. So I can see like what you're saying, McRae. It's not about smashing teams. It's just about banking the 4 points. Side bottom 300th, went off with a knee injury, really disappointing.
He lasted 12 minutes or something, I think.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah, look, innocuous tackle. I think his leg was obviously twisted in the wrong and the medial ligament was either
Although
torn
I do wonder with stuff like that, whether it's not just what happened on the day, but it's sort of an accumulative thing where just over time it's like, well, it's going to go at some point.
Do you know I feel a little bit responsible for this?
Because what you?
Well, no, before the game, like the club put up the footage of him leaving his house, and the neighbours all got round and made a banner for his car to drive through and all that sort of thing. And he's got out at some point and gone and talked to them. He's given them hugs and shaking his hands. It had been raining, I think, and it was looking a bit wet. I remember thinking, wouldn't it be a shame if he slipped in the gutter on his on the way to? But then again, he didn't need to because things happened.
To go, he played a beast of a game.
He did, didn't he?
He'd probably have to be, up there in the top 5 players in the league right
definitely.
now.
The thing I love about De Goey at the moment is he's just really flying under the radar in terms of the notice that he's getting. The media have just lived the Dacos thing for pretty much the whole season, and he's been quietly achieving.
Well, De Goey was doing it last year. Yeah, De Goey was doing it last year until the Bali thing. I mean, he was playing really well. And then it took him a little while to get back into the swing of things after that. But, we've talked about this previously, that when he plays as a forward, you notice him because he's doing a lot more spectacular things. As a mid, he's just doing the bread and butter things over and over and over. So he's not standing out as much, particularly when you got, like, Nick Dacos there taking some focus away from him.
Yeah, and it's interesting. McFly made mention that he'd been playing that hybrid sort of midfield role, so a bit of time up forward, bit of time in the guts, and clearly he's built the tank up to the place now where he needs to be, and he can stay in there, and he's certainly reaping the rewards.
Yep.
Drifts forward, kicks a goal every now and then.
Nick Dacos a little bit quieter lately, even though he's getting the numbers on the board. Doesn't seem as consistently damaging.
He's still consistently good though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if my expectations are just way too high, but it feels like, I think it was the Adelaide game, I saw him on the bench, he was getting a lot of work on the calf. So I don't know if that's impacted him anyway. Like, he's obviously still getting numbers. He's still doing some really nice stuff, but he doesn't seem as consistently incisive as he was previously. He's probably getting a lot more notice since Adelaide tagged him with Sil from The Sopranos. No, sorry, it's Ben Keys. Sorry, same hairstyle, got confused. And then Sydney
Hey, you want me to take him out?
That's really bad.
That's a really bad one.
Yeah, Sydney.
Can we cut that out?
No,
another crack?
That's staying. We're not redoing anything.
Give me 4 more months.
Sydney outright just fucking what they did was disgraceful.
Monstered him.
Yeah, well, illegally monstered him
with big hairy paws.
Yeah. So, and I think he still had like a 40 possession game in there, but against GWS, but it wasn't like a really sort of, he's had 40 possession games where he's kicked goals and that, and you just think this kid's killed them. But that one seemed a lot more.
There was still
Gary Ablett junior-esque.
There were still some really good moments of pure Nick Silk, and you wonder whether you just take some of that stuff now for granted because it's just what he's really capable of doing. Like there was a moment where he sort of released the ball up back, and next thing you know, the camera's tracking.
Kept running, yeah, kept running.
I didn't go to the game. He's tracking the ball movement, and all of a sudden he's taken a mark inside 50, and he's goal from that. And he's just run the full length of the ground. You think for that age, to have that much of a tank and have that much of awareness of what you're going to be and where you can be is incredible. I think, what sort of quieted the game a little bit, there was some real uncharacteristic turnovers during this game, and he wasn't on his own. I think some of our field kicking was fairly average at times, but I think a lot of that's to do with the lack of urgency that was in this particular game. There was no sort of intense pressure, and I think they sort of ended up being a little bit lax with some of the ball movement and some of the way that they were utilising skills, because you just didn't have that sense of rush that you needed to be in, or that they're normally in. So I think a lot of that stuff was a little bit wayward, but look, I'm more than happy with him at this stage. I think he can have his quiet weeks, which still ends up with the high possession count.
Well, Josh Dacos had a really good game, kicked 3 goals from the wing, which, for a midfielder...
It's not a bad return for a wingman. How many wingmen kick 3 goals?
Yeah. I mean, Carlton would be killing to get a midfielder who kicks goals.
They'd be killing for anything that could kick.
Yeah, kick a goal, that's a good point. Taylor Adams' quandary.
He's Mr. 50-50 at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have the good and you can have the bad all in one tasty morsel. Look, some of the stuff he did was sublime. When he drops his head and sort of obviously kicks with intent, he's looking beautiful. But geez, some of his clangers and turnovers are horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I think technically his kicking seems okay, but I think he tends to overestimate his ability. At times, it's like he's going to go for a kick.
Overestimate their chances.
Yeah, there you go. But he'll go for passes where I think, look, let Nick Dacos go for that pass. You go for the sort of simpler
the pinpoint precision ones where you're picking out one bloke in a sea of four.
And there's sometimes he goes to things where I think you don't have that distance on your kicking. Why would you go for that? But the other stuff he does is really good. He's fanatical at the ball. He's very defensively minded. He does actually kick a goal here and there. I think he's generally a pretty good leader too of the club. I think he's one of those guys that goes in and, sort of like after milestone goals and that, he's one of the first in, and keeping the morale up and all that sort of stuff. So, but the thing is, the other side of his possession...
Is he possessed?
No, there was that comment you talked about that he'd lose as a grand final one day.
That was in the speeded up version that we ended up recording. No, I did read on one of the Collingwood forums, someone made a statement, and I don't think it's anyone I recognised before. It's one of those people that just obviously go and stir things up. What are they called? Trolls or something?
Like the EGM group.
Yeah. The statement was along the lines, he's going to cost us a flag one day. So not only are supporters at the moment overreacting about
winning flags, we're going to lose them.
Yeah, that's right. We're already plotting the losses because you can't have one without the other. It's the yin and yang of Collingwood. I think the ratio of Collingwood grand final wins is something like 1 in 14 at the moment. So they're expensive things for us to get. But it's a strange statement to make. Look, at the end of the day, he ain't going to be dropped. He's in your best 22. No
best
matter
18.
What. Yeah. He's gonna be there week in, week out, grand final or no. So it's a stupid comment to make. You wouldn't drop him because he's going to cost you a flag. Seriously.
Go back to the 2018 grand final.
No,
I think he was actually one of our best free players. It was him, De Goey and Cox in the second half particularly. But like Adams and De Goey just kept trying to win the game, whereas I think other players were playing to save it. So
the other players were all trying to kick to McGovern.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
I made it once before,
Jaden Stevenson, not a Collingwood player anymore, but he played well.
Good observation.
Yeah, he's played 100 games. There was an article about like how much he's matured and all that. There was someone posed in Radioland, I think it was, how good a player would he be under McRae. And I think that's partly, for whatever reason, development in the previous regime wasn't great at times.
No, I think he would thrive in our current environment.
And I think, like, in the lead up to the side bottom playing his 300, there was talks about, him galvanising his career and all that. And they talked about sort of like he had a long conversation with McRae when McRae first arrived. It was like, what's your best position in that? And it was just, let's play in the wing and I need to concentrate on the fundamental. And it just seems that McRae sort of said, look, where can I use your best? It's here. Same with Josh Dacos. It's like, we're going to use your best. It's here. Whereas previously they were just being used in really bizarre ways. I think side bottom occasionally came off half back. Josh Dacos is used as a defensive half forward. So it seems under this regime a lot more awareness and expectation about where they're going to get the best out of players.
It's just classic playing to your strengths.
Why would you do that when you could just kick sideways 58 times?
Well, why do you do anything? Because we've got the next 16 flags stitched up.
Well, that's true. The North game, they did what they needed to do to win. But the really disappointing thing, it's great we're 10-1, but it's fucking May. And, as far as I'm aware, June, July, August, and most of September, to get through, that's 4 months to win a flag. So for fans to really sort of go out there and talk about...
it's
overly celebrate a little bit too early.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous. If anything, 2011 should have taught us all about how much you can dominate a season, and then the wheels can fall off at the pointy end more than easily.
And that's really interesting.
A couple of injuries.
Yeah, because in the highlights that the Collingwood Instagram account showed in the lead up to side bottom 300, there was a goal he kicked against Adelaide in 2012 over there. It was a close game. We just won. And Paul Roos was doing the special comments, and he just talked about 2011. Collingwood played really well, but just toward the end of the year, they started getting injuries and things started going wrong. And it just fell away from him really suddenly. So that just shows, as you said, he dominated the competition for 4.5 months, but it's that last 4 to 6 weeks, which is going to be pivotal. So right now, I wouldn't even say we're flying. Part of it, I think, it's not a great competition at the moment.
No, it's very even. And I wouldn't say we're flying either. I think we're just winning. And winning's good. I'll take winning every day of the week. But, McFly's come out and said, too, the same thing, that every week is essentially a learning opportunity. They want to keep learning. They want to keep improving. I think that's the attitude that they're validly taking internally. I don't think they're all sitting around going, well, fuck, all we're going to do is just go out there and we'll win next couple of months. Don't even think about it. Don't bother training. It's all a fait accompli that we're going to win the flag this year. Let's just put the feet up and enjoy the ride. I think for supporters, you've got to temper your expectations a little bit. Hype the fuck out of it when you're in grand final week, and hopefully they actually pull one off. But up until then, fucking history is going to tell you that we don't succeed a lot. And having that sort of overestimation at this stage of the season, I find it a bit bewildering.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're coming off back-to-back flags or anything. And look, the one thing I'll say I really like about McRae is there seems to be a lot of breaking of hoodoos. So the typical Collingwood hoodoos of, going into this week, you still hear from the occasional fan, this is one would usually drop. We could go 2 games clear of Port or whoever the case is, second at that stage. This is one would usually drop. And we didn't. Go back to last year, the last round against Carlton. If we won, we got a top 4 spot. If we lost, we'd probably drop down to 6, and Carlton would stay in the 8, and we'd probably play them again.
And that was the final round.
That was the final round, yeah. And
I don't think it's going to be all that different this year.
No, but in terms of we won and we knocked them out. Usually that's sort of the thing we don't do. So it seems like they address, cultural hoodoos or whatever, and his perspective, I guess is the best way of putting it, just sort of slices through all the typical Collingwood bullshit. So hopefully he can remain focused, but this stuff coming from the outside actually does worry me if it's going to infiltrate the inside and these guys are going to get a little bit complacent. When I say a little bit, it doesn't need to be much to drop away. You look at someone like Geelong, they've dropped off only a little bit and they've been grossly exposed now. So
a lot of injuries. I mean, that's exactly the point you're trying to make as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you lose someone of the ilk of Moore this year, you're in struggle town, I think, by about 25%. That's a massive hole to cover. You want everyone. And the thing is, I don't think it's a case with a lot of flag wins that you do it by luck or anything like that. It's the luck component is that you get through a season fairly unscathed with your injuries. 2010 was a classic example. I mean, there's 2 things. Is we pretty much carried a full list of top performers into that grand final. I think the only doubtful one was the Ball knee injury going in.
Oh, Ball, yeah.
You weren't sure about whether he was going to
pull up.
Hamstring.
He sort of limped off with a hamstring against Geelong, but it turned out to be cramp.
But that, which was
and then that was
the only question.
The only other one was Presti with a groin, but they had a replacement for him in Nathan Brown.
No, that's right. But apart from that, nothing else fucking happened.
No.
And so that's generally what you want. Every other year it's been some sort of fucking distraction, or someone's been rubbed out, or somebody's leaving and someone doesn't want to leave. Malthouse. There's all these things that can derail the season. That's not so much about what your performance reflects. 11's a great example of that. That you just need little things to go wrong at the pointy end, and you can collapse.
So going forward, Lipinski should come back after the break. Sidebottom will go out, so they'll probably play a McInnes or someone for him, or maybe they'll even give Ed Allen a look. It's probably a good game to give Ed Allen a look, given West Coast has got a really young side also. It's also Ed Allen's home state. But going forward, you're going to have Lipinski to come into that side, and Sidebottom obviously to come back, and then Frampton or Howe. And I think Frampton's the better choice because I think they just need another big body defender. But then if Howe's fit, you bring him in, and who goes out? You have Markoff, Murphy, Noble, and Quaynor. I think Murphy is safe because of his intercept marking, although he's a little bit of an undersized defender. But
Quaynor's safe.
I think, Quaynor I think is really good overhead. Now Noble and Markoff, they both provide good dash. I like Markoff actually a bit better because Markoff's just a bigger body there. So, but I know Noble's highly rated in that.
Well, Noble's played. What is he up to, about 80 games or something? I think he's even playing games off season. He's just doesn't seem to be. He's ever going to be in contention for being dropped unless he maybe strings together 6 or 7 completely horrendous games. I think he's a cog. I think Markov's probably the sacrificial one, which is it's an incredible shame because I've really grown to like him. I just said his size is good. His kicking has some serious penetration in it, and he's just really linking up well and playing well off the halfback. But ultimately, some of it's going to have to change because
Well, the other one there, you go down to the other end, you got McStay.
McStay coming in.
So
and they aren't going to fuck around with him. They all want him back in for whatever reason.
I'd rather play Cox than McStay, but I know they'll go with McStay. I mean, McStay, I think, if he's going to pinch hit in the ruck, I don't think he's that good a ruckman. I mean, the other one then is Johnson. Does he, he's just really a highlight reel at the moment. He'll do a few things and then just disappear.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's disappointing because, look, I do like him, but he just doesn't do enough.
But again, here's another...
He imposes a couple of... Yeah, he just seems to vanish a lot. I don't think you're going into a granny because we're going to win one this year. But going into the finals,
not there.
Do you want blokes like that just may or may not provide a cameo?
I think also Johnson's really inexperienced still. He's only played
no, exactly right. No, you're spot on. Yeah.
I'd actually probably keep Johnson in front of McStay, unless McStay could, come back and provide some Myercheck-like form. Because the thing with Johnson is he has that X factor which might fucking mark in the goal square over top of the pack, whereas McStay's not going to do that. Johnson, he can do those sort of things that the really freakishly skilled can do. And it provides an unknown quantity in the grand final, whereas McStay, look, he's a solid player, but that's pretty much all he is. And similarly with Cox. Cox, we know, can actually tear apart a game. He might have only done it, 3 times in his career, or 4 times, but that's 4 times more than McStay's done it. So
the thing is, too, is Myercheck's playing a hell of a lot better without McStay in that forward line.
Yeah.
And what is Mio now? He'd be, 3rd or 4th in the Coleman?
He'd have to be.
He's kicked, he kicked 2 or 3 on the weekend?
He kicked 3. So he's gotten a lot of 3s and 4s this year, and a 5.
Do you want to stop that by bringing something else in? Unless he's going to kick the same equivalent numbers, but, on different levels. That's McStay, that is. I don't know.
That's what I said. He's going to have to provide that really consistent form. In the ruck, Cox is always going to be a better option.
Yep.
And Cameron's obviously their preferred ruck, which is they've brought him straight in and thrown him straight into the ruck. But, I don't know the way they're going to look at it in terms of, hey, as you said, we've paid all this money for McStay, we've got to use him.
Oh, I think that'll be the case.
And then on the flip side, in terms of the VFL, you got Finley McRae, who sort of mauls that VFL level, that standard, but seems to struggle when he comes up, although he hasn't really been given a good run at it. But you have him, you have Josh Carmichael, again, another good mid.
I just don't see Carmichael making it in the scenes this year. I just not sure what role he's going to come in and fill.
Well, I mean, I think bringing Mitchell in has obviously pushed all those guys back behind the queue, and there's probably a little bit of indictment on these guys that they went out and got Mitchell. And then you have, obviously, Ed Allen, and there's someone else I'm missing off the top of my head. Reef McInnes. I don't think Bianco's going to get back in.
No, but these are the ones that were pinch hitting for their opportunities that have all completely...
I think Reef McInnes is the other one, and I think he's
Rusco?
probably... See, Rusco, no, because of he's behind Hal and all these other guys. And I like Rusco, but I just don't think he's going to... He's so far down the queue there. He reminds me a lot of Goldsack when Goldsack first arrived, in that Goldsack was so far behind the queue. Goldsack probably would have been better off going elsewhere and becoming a mainstay. Like when we got Luke Ball, Goldsack was the guy they tried to offer up and trade, and if he went to St Kilda, he probably would have played 10 years unbroken. At Collingwood, he was always behind all the other halfbacks and that we had. But yeah, he got all these sort of guys who were like, still coming up through the VFL and don't have a lot of AFL experience. McInnes, like I was going to say, would probably get the side bottom job, I think. And that would be actually good to get a bit of a look at him, because he's been coming on as a sub only. So giving them a bit more time. But it's interesting that I think, at the start, I thought at the start of the year, that team that starts the year won't be the team that finishes it. There's always sort of guys who come up and replace. You go back to 210. The year started with Josh Fraser, Tarkin Lockyer, and O'Brien in that side, and by the end of the year, all those guys had been out. And guys like McCaffrey and Blair had come in, and I would have said Hoskin Elliott would have had a vulnerable position, but he's been actually pretty good the last 3 weeks. And we've said it before. I mean, because the team's running well and they're clicking, that's bringing him into the game, and he gives them a bit of versatility if there is an injury, because he can play down, back, and all that sort of stuff. So It's actually fascinating that, we're 11 rounds in and the side's pretty fixed and you can't really see anyone at VFL level knocking the door down.
No, and there's certainly performances there that would dictate that you get elevated, but I just don't think McFly wants to mess too much with the side. Look, I went into this week and probably next week thinking that we'd rest a few blokes, but clearly that's not going to be the case, and he said as much, that he's not going to put anyone off to the side. I think he considers making him sub for a week is enough. But there seems to be a push to have a settled side that's going to be structured to have a crack at the end of the year and well and truly know where its strengths and weaknesses lie. I don't think he's going to bring anybody in at this stage to have a 1 or 2 week game and then go back. You run the risk of injuries, I guess, but, look, if all things work and they stay on the park, it's your best chance of being successful at the end. If you do have consistency throughout the season, as I said before, it's no surprise that in 10 that you had that settled side going in at the end when it mattered and without any form of distraction.
So you look at the 23 who took the field against North Melbourne on Sunday whenever we played. McStay, Frampton, Howe, Lipinski, side bottom. So side bottom was part of that team. So those 4 would be in immediate senior contention. I think Lipinski is the one who will definitely walk in regardless because they really like his running and all that sort of stuff. I don't know who's going to go. I think Frampton has to play because they need 2 big-bodied defenders, as Carlton exposed them for having an undersized Murphy. And I think that's a risk. Port, when they're fit, they've got like Dixon and Marshall and that. Adelaide's got Tilthorpe and Walker. So all the sides have most sides have like 2 key forwards. And Howe, I don't know if Howe's looked like he aged quite a bit last year. There's times his standing leap was just really terrible, and he just sort of seemed to read the play a little bit slow, and he's getting on. Now, if he does come back, how do you fit him back in there with Frampton?
The thing is, too, depending on when he comes back, when he came back last year, he was massively underdone, and there were some howlers in some of those finals. I just don't think you want that. If you want to be serious, you want everybody firing.
Well, it'll be interesting if McRae has maybe internally they think Howe's fucking flying and he's, definitely should come back. But from the outside looking in, he looks like his time might have passed and there might be better options than that. I really think Frampton's a must now in that side.
Look, and sometimes you just got to make those hard decisions. Like what you mentioned before with that group of players in 10, the Lockiers and then whatnot, that you've been faithful servants and you've done everything asked of you, but,
there are just better options now.
Exactly right. And anyone who comes in at this point now to replace anyone who's really performing well, either going to have to meet that level or exceed it. Otherwise, you've made a mistake.
Yep. Got West Coast, the might of West Coast. They got I heard 25 players to choose from.
Is that all?
Yeah. Then
do any of them play for West Coast?
They're talking about Adam Simpson taking an extended break to get away from the mess that's the season. It's only halfway through the year. Essendon only beaten by 10 goals, but it's still 10 goals. So you'd think we'd win this one relatively easy.
Like we're going to roll North relatively easy.
Well, we did roll them relatively easy.
So we're going over there. I believe they're bringing back some aging superstars.
Josh Kennedy coming back.
Jakovic is coming back.
Glenn Denning.
Yep. Gollum's coming back.
Phil Matera.
Have we done all this before? I can't remember.
Yeah. So what's your tip?
West Coast by 10 goals.
So
home ground advantage.
So Collingwood by 76 points.
Do you think we'll do a little bit of experimenting this week? Or you just go over there and aim for the 4 points and just come home?
No, I think he'll want to bank the 4 points, but if he's confident that he's banked it, he might toss a few players. I wouldn't mind watching Will Kelly for a couple of weeks run around defence. Especially against West Coast, again, a younger team.
Kennedy and Darling, they're probably good for about 10 goals apiece, aren't they?
It does sort of worry me. This side's playing well, but I still look at them and think, you're really reliant on a couple of guys to be driving that side, and Darcy Moore's the one we mentioned. I think the Goey, Mitchell, they're really It's not just they're integral to sort of their own return. I think their presence then helps a lot of other players. You know, like Moore, you take him out of there, then guys like Murphy now who are doing the chop out, suddenly they've got to move up the ranks and be the key defender and shit like that. So I've always believed, like, you know, you have your core players, and then the guys around them can be role players, but as long as that core's working, they all get appreciated. And you take that core out, and then either they're exposed or they stand up. But, like, I think you see with a lot of flag sides, like if you look at, I don't watch a lot of other games, but if you look at someone like Geelong, I bet if you look at the players who look like world beaters last year, there's a handful of them that just look like really average players now that they're struggling.
Yeah.
Anyway, any final thoughts?
No, just go out there and win. Thanks, Woods, and bring home the 4 points. Yeah. And win the flag if it's not too much trouble.
Yeah. And we'll see you next week. Later.
Catch. I've got deja vu.